Welcome to our discussion this evening. The 97th Summit of the European Youth Parliament finished yesterday at Kortrijk in Belgium with the theme of In a Different Light. The theme this year has been engaging young people in politics, and the sessions are run by young people for young people. This evening, we're going to hear from Kenny Gray, a veteran of the European Youth Parliament, and also from two students, Rose and Emily. We're so grateful that you've made the time to come along this evening and tell us about this, and we're looking forward to hearing the latest news on this important initiative. We spoke to Kenny last year on a live stream, and he gave us an excellent history in that live stream about the involvement of Scottish students in European Youth Parliament. And it'll be really interesting this evening to hear how you've all coped with the COVID lockdowns and the different relations that are progressing between the UK and the EU. I'm going to hand over to Kenny in a minute, who'll be talking to the students this evening. But just to remind you, as always, we'd like to involve you, our audience, in this. So if you've got any questions, please send them in on Twitter or Facebook, and I'll try and bring them to Kenny at the end of the discussion. So over to Kenny.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for that introduction. Just bringing you up to date on the most recent European Youth Parliament event in the UK was held in September in Liverpool. It was a national session, and at that session there were teams from schools from across the United Kingdom taking part in 4 days of debate in Liverpool. And from that session, a number of students were selected to take part in further EYP events. And really, this evening is the opportunity to speak to two of those students with us tonight, Emily and Rose, about how they got involved and what's happened since then. There were a lot of students selected from that session. Indeed, a whole school, Mary Erskine in Edinburgh, were selected to represent the UK at an international session later this year. But a lot of individual students were also selected, and it's great that Rose and Emily are able to join us tonight. So the first thing I was going to ask, maybe start with Emily, is how did you get involved in the European Youth Parliament, Emily? And perhaps more interestingly, why did you get involved in the European Youth Parliament?
Well, I mean, as you know, Mr. Gray, I did in Primary 7 a kind of mini EYP event run by Mr. Gray at our school, and then from that, Mr. Gray asked me to do some public speaking events and whatever, and I do vividly remember in S2 I was sitting in his office with another girl who was a year older than me, and he turned and he went to both of us, "You both will be doing EYP when you're older." To which I was like, fine, whatever, okay, sure. Didn't think anything of it. And then, of course, it would have been S5, so I'm in S6. It would have been 2021, early 2021. Got an email from Mr. Gray about attending a digital session, because obviously everything was in COVID, that was basically for the whole of Scotland. So signed up. A couple of my other friends did it. I really enjoyed it. It was great. Obviously very different to the national session that I then did and the regionals that I did this year. And from that, I was selected to go on to the national session, which was also online. However, I wasn't able to make it, so didn't go much further than that. And then so it would have been probably about this time last year, my year head put up a post on Teams asking if anyone wants to do EYP, and me and my friend who did the digital session was like, why not? Let's get involved again. Did it again, and did the regionals, had a couple of the S5s, so Rose included. They did it with us, and we got through to the national session and did that. It was great.
Can I ask you, Emily, why did you get involved? I mean, it's obviously a long process there of you being encouraged to get involved and so on, but at some point you must have made a decision to say, yes, I will do this. Why would you do that? And did you know what you were getting into?
No, I didn't know what I was getting into. I'm glad I got into it, but I mean, I think it was just, I really enjoyed public speaking. I did a bit of debating in first year and I enjoyed it, but I didn't like the short prep side of it. I like to know what I'm going to say. And I mean, I've worked on that now with all my drama, whatever, but I at that point, I was like, why not try something different? It's not public speaking, it's not debating, it's a mix of both. So why not?
Okay, well, maybe come back to some of that in a minute, but meanwhile, the younger member of the team then, is that right, Rose? So how did you get involved in, and again, most interesting, maybe why, and did you know what you were getting into?
Well, as Emily said I got involved because our year had posted a thing on Teams, and I'd been wanting to get into debating because I'm quite shy, really, and I wanted to build my confidence with public speaking and with with just like speaking to people in general. So I signed up, and then went to regionals, and then it grew from there. So.
Okay, so did you think you understood when you started? I mean, you've attended an international session, is that right, in Romania?
Yeah.
Since September. So were you aware when you started just how broad this would be, that you could end up traveling to Romania to meet folk there?
No, not at all, because obviously when I first signed up, it was just for a regional competition, and I hadn't done much debating, so I never thought that I would go to another country to do it. So when I first signed up, I just assumed that we would just do the regional and then maybe get through to nationals, and then that would be it. But I had no idea that it would be this much.
Okay, well, maybe we'll hear more about the international aspect of that maybe in a minute. Emily, how about you? Did you have any idea just how wide, because you've been invited to a national session, is that correct, somewhere in Europe?
Yeah, I'd been invited to the national session Advance, which was the online one 2 years ago.
Right.
And I didn't attend it, so I didn't know what it was going to be like when I went into it. I was the Scottish national session that they ran, which was for the whole of Scotland online, was built very much like a national session, and you had chairpersons and you worked on your things, and it was a multi-day thing. Whereas the regional that I did in, well, this year it would have been, was a very different experience. So doing the two, there was a kind of contrast, and then going back and doing the nationals, which I really enjoyed, again was a very similar kind of setup to the online one, except you got to meet more people, you got to interact and teamwork, and it was more interactive.
What did you have to do at the regionals? Can you tell us something about the regional? And that's the West of Scotland Forum.
So the West of Scotland one that I attended was basically we, as a team from Douglas Academy, competed against 4 other schools, I think it was, from mainly around Glasgow area, and we were basically given a topic. I can't even remember what ours was. I think it was about jobs and employment.
It was the gig economy, I think, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, gig economy. And we basically made speeches about why our proposition was good, and then we listened to others and took on board their ideas, and they told us what they thought of our resolution, and then we kind of debated back and forth what we could and couldn't add, and what we thought were good ideas and what we didn't think were good ideas. And it was very different in a way from, you're debating, in that it was constructive criticism. It wasn't you're wrong, I'm right. It was very building on ideas, and that was even more so at your national session.
Okay, can I pass on to Rose and ask Rose about the national session, because you went from the West Scotland Forum to the national session. What do you think the big difference was?
Well, there's a lot more people, and it's a lot longer,
Right.
because obviously the regional session is just not even a whole day.
Right.
Or was it? I can't remember, but it was definitely not as long.
Right.
And for the national session, you definitely need, like, for the regional session, you could have got through without speaking to any of the other people who aren't in your team, really, except for in debating. But obviously, with the national session, you're put into a committee with a bunch of people from around the UK who you don't know. So you need to get to know them so that you're able to work with them on things. And also, at the regional session, you're given a resolution to debate about, whereas at the national session, you're just given an issue, and you have to think of the problems that come with the topic, and then try and think of solutions with a group of people that you've just met. So it's a lot more challenging, but I'd say that makes it a lot more fun and worthwhile as well.
So you were working with teams from schools across the UK. How did you find that? I mean, was that an easy thing to do? Did you find it easy? Was there anything surprising about how you meeting these people from all over? Yeah, from the south of England, the north of England, Northern Ireland.
I found it pretty nerve-wracking because I'm not that good at speaking to people that I've just met. But everyone was really lovely and really smart, and it was really interesting to hear people's points of views that you wouldn't really have thought about before. I know a lot of people who were from Ireland on my team had very strong views about one of the debates. I can't remember which one it was, which I never would have thought about that viewpoint before coming from Scotland.
Yeah. I mean, it was about the Northern Ireland Protocol, in fact,
yes.
and that whole issue. So you would say there were a lot of people there with very strong views on different sides. Is that right? How did you cope with that?
Well, in our committee, we had a very non-controversial topic, so it was actually okay.
Right.
But I know I heard from a lot of other people from other committees that there was a lot of going back and forth and a lot of arguing. But I think EYP is a very constructive atmosphere. Even for topics that are really controversial, you're not gonna get into full-blown angry arguments over anything. It's very civil, and I don't know, I feel like it's quite easy to resolve any issues generally.
Okay. Emily, how about you? What about nationals then? When you took part in the event in Liverpool, people from all over the UK, was it easy to work with them? How did you deal with people with strong views?
We were lucky again that our topic wasn't particularly controversial in terms of trying to come up with ideas. We all went down the similar path. One of the things that did strike me was the lack of knowledge about Scotland in general from English people. A lot of them didn't know. I mean, they didn't know about the Scottish education system, but there's other things that I thought they would have known about and they just didn't. Same for some of the Northern Irish people. I spoke to them and they were like, English people don't know stuff that I thought they would know. But it was nice to meet new people. I had quite a small committee to begin with. There was only I think 5 or 6 of us, whereas most committees had 8. I think one even had 10. So we're quite tight knit in some respects, and our chair was really good at facilitating a lot of the idea kind of back and forth and making sure that we all worked with different people in the committee and got on. And it was really nice. And then going into General Assembly and discussing your ideas with other committees was lovely to speak to other people and meet new friends from across the UK, you know.
So if these other teams were learning more about Scotland from you, was there anything in particular that you think you learned about them? Was there anything that surprised you about the differences between you and the people from some of the other teams?
I don't know if I could pick out specific examples. There were certain things, I don't know if that's just because they're English or whether just that's what they say, but there were certain words and stuff and just dialect things that's nothing to do with the EYP that I thought was quite funny. You know, yeah, there's, you know, it was a very fun environment. I did my accent got made fun of a couple of times, but
oh dear,
all in good heart.
All in good heart. Okay. Now, international sessions, because as I said, 6 students from your team were selected to represent the UK international sessions or sessions taking part elsewhere in Europe over the next few months. And Rose, you were lucky enough to be involved in one of the first sessions, and that was a session held in Romania. How did you feel about that when you received that message to say, please come to Romania to represent the UK along with various other people? How did you feel about that?
I was nervous because, again, I'm not very good at speaking to people, but I was really excited because I think Romania isn't a country that necessarily I would have thought to travel to. And so to get the opportunity to go and then to be very much immersed in the culture and have people from Romania showing off their culture and being really proud of it, and you know, getting to know little things that you probably wouldn't have even if you had visited the country, you know, having English speaking people your age be able to tell you about cultural things or be able to tell you about little things that they like about their country. I think that's a really uniquely positive thing about it.
Okay. Was there anything particularly challenging or anything particularly surprising? I mean, because I think the session you were at was the Romanian national session, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't an international in the sense that there weren't a lot of other teams there from other countries. So it was particularly Romanian. Was there anything that surprised you or that you felt particularly challenging about taking part in that session?
Well, there was a few debates that were very much centered around Romanian politics and Romanian issues. And I thought at first, I definitely won't be able to contribute to those because I don't know anything about Romania. But once we got into discussion as a committee, about other committees' resolutions, it was actually really easy to kind of contribute because it's actually not so Romania specific if you think about it in a wider context, if that makes sense. So yeah, I was surprised by the amount that I was able to contribute, I guess. I thought that I would be doing a lot more kind of just sitting back and letting other people take charge. But yeah, I was a lot more active in the debates than I thought I would be.
Okay. And how about the interest among the Romanian students in what was happening in the UK? How did they respond to the fact that you're coming obviously from the UK with Brexit and all that sort of stuff going on? How did they respond to your input from that side, do you think?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I was expecting more questions about kind of UK politics and things like that. They didn't seem that fussed. They actually asked more questions about Harry Potter than I think they did politics, which is interesting. But yeah, I think a lot of them were just more involved in Romanian politics than UK politics, which is fair enough because I'm more involved in UK politics than Romanian politics. But yeah, there was a few things where we're kind of able to like discuss and compare what was going on in Romania compared to what's going on in the UK and things like that, and just like get different insights into how different countries are like do things.
Okay. Emily, I know you haven't yet been to a national or international session, but you are going to be involved in some other things, and I believe with EYP you're going to continue your involvement in terms of organising. Can you tell me something about what you're doing with that and how that operates?
Yeah, so essentially EYP UK organise roughly 15 regionals each year. So last year we attended the West Scotland regional. There's 2 regionals in Scotland, West and East, aptly named. And I'm organising the Southeast regional in England. So that's kind of like London area and the southeast of England. Where I'm working with 2 other people, one of whom I've met and one of whom I haven't. And basically we're working as a team of 3 to organise 2 regionals, which will happen in kind of late February next year, I think we're planning on. So similar time to when we attended the West Regional last year. And it's been a really interesting process so far. We've got 2 regional coordinators, which are helping us to organise everything. And make sure that we're doing
what do you have to do then? What do you have to do to organise that?
So we're starting with contacting venues. So in previous years we've used St Paul's School, and I think we're planning on using them again. We may use another venue. We're kind of figuring that out at the moment. That's the first stage, and then about contacting schools and getting as many schools involved as we physically can get in these venues. We're kind of doing a mix of schools that have done it before and a mix of schools that haven't done it, and we're interested to get the schools involved that haven't had the opportunity to do it. As well, that is one of our focuses this year, as many other years have done as well, just getting everyone in that vault and in the southeast involved that can be. Obviously it's a very difficult process to whittle down schools because there's 133 schools in the southeast and we have maybe 20 places. So we're trying to get as many people involved as we can in EYP. And then on top of that, I'll probably be traveling down to London for a couple of days, and I'll be at the session and helping make sure things run smoothly. And there'll be other bits along the way that I have to do, but that's the kind of main 3 things.
Okay, right. And how about in the future? Do you see yourself doing more stuff with EYP beyond school?
Yeah, probably. I'd be interested to attend a national session again. I know I made a few friends at the national session that I attended, and they live all across England. So I think we've kind of made an agreement that we might at some point try and all attend the same national session and meet up again. But we'll see. Depends.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, because obviously with having done this for a number of years, I am aware that there are quite a lot of alumni of EYP who remain involved for quite a long time. How about you, Rose? Do you see yourself continuing doing more?
Yeah, well, I'm young enough to do the regional session and the national session as a delegate again, which I may or may not do, depending on how busy I am when it comes around. But definitely after school, I'd like to get involved as like one of the officials at a regional or a national session. I know there's lots of opportunities. Once you've done a national session, you get put into this Facebook group and they just send like loads of opportunities, which are in the UK and then also all across Europe. So there's so many opportunities that you can apply for. But yeah, I think I'd definitely like to get involved maybe as a chair person or jurying or something like that, or maybe even organizing, I don't know.
Okay, in the future. Emily, in terms of Europe and how it involves you with, obviously with EYP across the every country that's in the Council of Europe have EYP organisations, you see yourself having involvement with them in the future, with international sessions outside the UK?
I'd like to. I think I'd be particularly interested in perhaps trying at some point to go over to France, because I'm studying advanced higher French this year and maybe getting involved in that somehow. But yeah, definitely if I can. I'm currently in the process of applying to uni and stuff, and obviously I'll have to figure out how that fits in, and because sometimes it's in term time. But I know a lot of the head organisers for other regionals are in uni and balance it fine. So it just depends on the timings, and yeah.
What do you think the main
works.
benefits are? If you summed it all up, what do you know? I mean, obviously you've done this over a couple of years now, even though I mentioned it to you when you were much younger. But the last couple of years you've been very much involved. Do you think it's changed the way you view Europe, how you view your horizons, if you like, with the rest of Europe?
Definitely. I mean, I don't know for me if it has as much to do with politics as it does for other people getting involved. But certainly just the opportunity to travel to other countries and go and meet new people that I would never have met in any other circumstance. Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely broadened my horizons and my thoughts of where I could go with this. Yeah.
Yeah, can I ask you as well? This is a question that always lurks somewhere. What do your folks think about what you're doing? I mean, you're organising an event in the southeast of England for 24 secondary schools. You know, how do they feel about all your involvement with this?
I honestly, I don't know. I mean, they've not been completely against the idea. My dad quite likes that I'm involved in something. You know, that kind of thing. I don't know. In all honesty, I think. I mean, they were a bit hesitant when I said about England, because I wasn't expecting to be offered an England regional. I was hoping that it would be a Scottish one. A couple of the people on our team are doing the Scottish ones.
Right.
So I'm happy that I'm doing an English one. It's a different experience, but yeah, it's a bit daunting almost, because I'm only 16 and heading down to England or down to London possibly on my own. Who knows?
Rose, how about you? Do you think it's changed the way you think about the UK and Europe?
Yeah, I think I had a very narrow view of politics and countries as a whole. Even though obviously I was aware that not all countries are run the same as the UK, I don't think you really have like a serious awareness of it until you go to another country and speak to young people who like experience how their countries run every day. I think that's really worthwhile. And
how you, I think I know the answer to this, but how do your family think about this? Are they pleased that you're doing this? Think it's challenging?
My parents are very happy because I think it's made me a lot more confident, and also my mum got to come with me to Romania, so she was quite happy about that.
Oh, so she was able to experience it as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I think as we're heading up to 8 o'clock, Jenny, I don't know if there are any questions popping up that we can deal with or try to deal with.
Yeah, we've got, actually it's been brilliant so far. Thank you. You've restored our faith in having some sort of good future if it's in your two's hands. So well done. So we've got a question from Dee, who is asking, Scotland is sort of unique in having the subject of modern studies. have either of you done that just to sort of pick up your politics knowledge? I don't know. Do you want to start with Emily?
Haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't. I know a lot of the people that I met at EYP were doing A-level history or A-level politics, and obviously I didn't actually know that modern studies was a Scottish thing only, which is quite interesting. I did it in S1 and 2, and I really enjoyed it. But for me, I'm more involved in my kind of science and interest in science, and I want to go into medicine. So it's a very different thing. And EYP for one of those things has been a very different experience, and something that's made me think, oh, maybe I could go in and do a bit of politics if I wanted to. And I did contemplate crash hiring modern studies, but in the end didn't. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it when I did it, and I think it's really interesting that it is a specifically Scottish thing.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Rose, what about you? Did you do it?
Yeah, I take modern studies. I did National 5 last year, and I'm doing higher this year. I think it's a really interesting subject because it's got aspects of sociology, it's got aspects of economics, it's got aspects of politics kind of all mashed together into one subject. So I think it gives you like a good overview of a lot of like social sciences. I think it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's good. I suppose I've just another question was just also in your age group. Do you find that people are talking about sort of politics or wider issues, or do you think?
It depends on the platform at times. A couple of my friends are very involved in climate action and regularly attend and organise climate strikes. I'm not as involved because my parents aren't keen on me missing school. So that's I've not been to climate strikes and stuff. I'm intrigued by that kind of thing, and I think given the right platform, a lot of young people today will voice their opinions, but the key word there is given the right platform, and it's not always possible to have that, which is a shame. But yeah, I think in school we're able to voice our opinions well and talk about politics and talk about climate change and talk about what school can do.
Do you think there should be the vote at 16? Would that be a better way to get people involved, do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a slightly scary prospect. I mean, I'm 16 and I think it's very scary that I can vote in Scottish elections. I mean, have I voted? I don't. Yeah, no, I have voted. And well, there you go. And I think it's a very scary prospect because I understand a lot about politics, but I know a lot of my friends that don't. It's like, I'll just tick a box, see what happens.
Yeah.
So it's a slightly scary prospect.
And what about Rose? What do you think? People, just the other question I was asking about, do you find people are interested in wider issues and things?
Well, I think sometimes me and my friends will have little conversations or I suppose kind of debates-ish on political matters, but a lot of the time it's only stuff that like directly affects us. But I think giving 16-year-olds the vote would be valuable because a lot of people, even if they didn't know about politics, they would go in and educate themselves about parties and educate themselves about politics before voting so that they can make an educated vote. And I think that would be a valuable way to get people engaged and involved, giving them an opportunity to like have their voice heard and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. I'll leave it to you, Kenny, to wind things
Jenny,
up.
I was just going to pick up the point you made about positivity of all this. I mean, I have to say, having been involved with young people involved in European Youth Parliament for a long, long time, given the state of the news that we see every day, which leads, I think, to many people switching off and not engaging with news because, let's face it, there are so many horrible, depressing stories all over the media. That it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of people to find any kind of positives around what we do. And I have to say that the sort of engagement that we see, and I'll embarrass Emily and Rose since they're actually here, but the engagement that they have and the rest of their team and the hundreds of young people across the country and the thousands of young people across Europe who are involved and engaged in the kinds of discussions that Rose and Emily have mentioned week in, week out across Europe is a very, very positive thing. And Emily, I would have to say, I'm not at all scared at the prospect of you voting. We haven't discussed politics in that sense of who anybody would vote for, but I would have to say I would feel very reassured that young people like you and like Rose and like the others involved would have a vote, and it would be a very positive thing. So I wouldn't be scared about allowing you a say in any of this, and I have no idea which way or how you would vote. So I'm not at all scared with that. One other thing I was going to ask you is about finance and how this is paid for. So I mean, obviously I know some of the background to that and where some of the money comes from, but from your perspective, how is the money for all this? How much did it cost? Where did it come from? Emily, do you want to start?
Sure. We were lucky that the school paid part of our fee to the nationals. I believe we may have had to pay a fee for regionals, but I'm not entirely sure. Which I think the school covered as well. Which is good. We're lucky that our school is in a position where they can pay for that, and I know there's a lot of schools that aren't. So the rest of it we covered ourselves. My parents were nice enough to pay for it. In terms of kind of upcoming stuff, I was invited to go to a national session in Ireland, which again it looks like I'm going to have to finance myself. I'm lucky I've got a job, so I've got the funds to do that if I want to. And again, it's a choice of mine if I want to go or not. I've been invited. So, and then with the HOing, I'm going to have to go down to London for 2 days, well, maybe more, which again will have to come out of my own pocket. So it's good things to do, but there is an unfortunate side that you do have to pay. There is a financial side to it as well. Okay,
Rose, how about you? Because obviously you've been an international session.
Yeah, well, obviously, Emily said about paying fees for nationals. I do think EYP tried to keep the costs as low as possible. I think for Romania, the actual costs of accommodation and food while I was there, it was really, really cheap. But obviously I had to pay for flights, I had to pay for other accommodation for when I wasn't staying at the event at UIP, and for a lot of people I know that would be like entirely inaccessible. There were a lot more people invited to go to the Romanian session from UIP UK than the people who actually went. There ended up being 4 of us, but I think originally 8 had been invited, and I think part of the reason that a couple of people couldn't go was purely just finance, because they couldn't afford to, drop everything and have one of their parents take them to a foreign country for a few days. Like, that's not possible for a lot of people. I'm just lucky to be able to do things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the EYP is funded largely by the Schwarzkopf Foundation based in Berlin, and that you can see them on their Pauline Schwarzkopf was involved in that, and they've been funding EYP for quite a number of years. So a lot of the costs and so on for attendance for national sessions are funded through grants from the Schwarzkopf Foundation, which does keep the costs of accommodation and food and so on when you're at an international session to a low amount. But there are obviously expenses, and the way prices are going, it's not going to get any easier. National sessions, regional sessions, it's good schools can help with that, but again, the costs are becoming perhaps harder to match. On that point, can I ask you, Emily, as an organiser and Rose as a prospective organiser in the future, how do schools get involved? How can schools get involved with EYP?
I am not entirely sure who you need to email, but we've had a couple of schools get in touch and stuff.
Okay. Do you contact schools? I mean, do you contact them directly?
Yeah, we are in the process of making a short list of schools that we're going to contact. Chances are the 20-odd schools that we contact, not every one of them is going to be able to make it. So we will try and contact as many schools as we can and get as many schools as we can involved. In terms of the West session, I'm not entirely sure how they're working that. I think you know more about that than I do.
Yes, well, Holly and Poonam are organising that, and they will be contacting schools. But if schools wanted to take part, they could contact EYP UK. They do have a website, and they do have a regional organiser on there that they could contact. Would you recommend, I think as maybe a closing point, Emily, would you recommend it to schools, or how would you sell it to schools? How are you going to sell it to schools in the
Well,
southeast?
I'm hoping the past half an hour has sold it to a lot of schools.
Okay.
I mean, it was fun. It was a really fun thing to do, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm getting involved still, and it just opens so many doors, and you get to do so many different things, and it feels like something I shouldn't be doing because I'm only 16 and going down and doing other bits and pieces. It feels like an almost you're a little bit kind of different and adventurous. But yeah, it was really fun, and
Okay.
I hope what we've discussed in the last half an hour is enough to sell it.
Okay, Rose, any points? How would you sell it? Do you think schools should be doing this? Do you think other young people should be signing up for this?
Yeah, well, I think it gives you a much broader outlook of Europe and of even politics within your own country if you don't go past nationals. And you get the chance to speak to so many like really intelligent young people who are really engaged in politics and really passionate about the things they're passionate about. And it's great to be able to speak to them. And, you know, yeah, it's just really interesting. Also, I would say that even if your school isn't doing UIP, you can like sign up and get involved and apply to attend events, even if your school isn't part of it. So just because your school isn't doing it, that doesn't mean you shouldn't.
So they can get involved regardless. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Jenny, I'm going to hand back to you. I think I'm going to thank Emily and Rose for joining us tonight, being very positive, as they always are. It's great to speak to you. Jenny, I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I think that's been one of our best live streams ever. Thank you, girls, for joining us and telling us all about that and covering so many points about the European Youth Parliament. And thank you, Kenny. So, yeah, thank you all, everyone watching.